You have to talk to Jane about that. Let her. Special edition of the news, marked 97003. A certain man made a certain important discovery, to wit, you must take action. Abnormal, needed action and reaction to certain normal operations. To expand his life and protect himself from the annoyance of a rabbit which continually entered his yard, a man surrounded his house with a motion-sensitive alarm system. But it turned out that the one rabbit's movements weren't enough to set it off. So the man made an arrangement whereby, whenever the one rabbit would appear, a second one would also. And their combined activities were sufficient to affect the result he desired. If your homeland is a swamp, you have two possibilities. The one to which you're naturally born is to sink therein, and the other is to take some action. You still live in a swamp. It's just that now you've taken some action. That certain man who made that certain important discovery regarding the need to take action also gained a different view of what action is in a certain regard. This action is breath. Its non-action, death. Seen this way, silence can be action, and lack of speech, non-action. The action he discovered was more than a doing of something. It was the realization of what a certain doing would do. It is action that fattens understanding, action that wipes instantly clouds from before the sun. In a darkened room, a man looked for a light switch. What he discovered instead was an understanding of darkness. A man who's made the discovery never speaks of things he's thought before, only about things he's said. The mind can only daydream and talk of what the man has done and said, never remembering anything about itself. A learned and holy man said to a potential man, "Perhaps I can be of help." And the man replied to himself, "No one can help me save me. And the sooner I should have realized that 20 years ago, the better." Learned and holy men exist everywhere, in books, in colleges, on street corners and temples, and in your mind. Be on the lookout. A man who does not take action will find himself accepting instruction and direction from sources which have none of their own. From a source, in fact, which is illusionary. Illusionary, in fact, and no one knows it. If a man does not take action, he is forever rehearsing a play that will never be performed. Without taking action, silence is sleep. Without taking action, it wins by default. One man's latest stanza. I originally took the mind as a playground, then as an adversary, then as a challenge, then as an annoyance, and finally as a puzzle to be solved. I sure have taken the mind to be many things, have I not? Without taking action, you lose. by default. The mind says everything in good time, but in the mind, this time never comes. One man said, "Is knowing how to be free the same as being free?" And another man replied, "Well, knowing how to be free is for sure knowing how." To which the first man was forced to agree. Having a schematic can be superior to having a map. These schematics are not sold. They must be discovered. A man is at home only when he knows that he is, and there is a certain discovery which will clarify the ability to so know. Unbeknownst to those who've not made the discovery, talk can be imprisoning, and yet also liberating. A key aspect of that certain discovery is in realizing a new use for talk. Being at home and being free are the same for those who make the discovery. The breath of the mind is talk. There are two types of talk. The mind knows of but one type. To be free, you must learn of two types. Another man's present stanza. Without taking action, you're done for. Without taking action, we're all done for. Without taking action, you're done for. Without taking action, we're all done for. Better take some action soon. Great are the discoveries in which new action flows from the realization of new understanding, but greatest of all are discoveries in which new understanding is piggybacked on the realization of new action. An empty space cannot be painted into a corner, or can it? The mind cannot talk to itself and to you simultaneously. Some discoveries the mind will never make. Glue is impartial and magnetism indiscriminate. Only that which is attracted and caught sees it otherwise. Mythology update. The original song of the sirens was the sound of the brain running. If a discovery is allowed to become overly poetic, it tends to become theoretical with an inclination to disappear. All things talked about tend to become poetic. The mind forever plans, while action is action. For a while, one man's favorite song was, "You Talk Too Much." Then it became, "You Listen Too Much." And finally it was named, "You Never Realize How to Make Use of the Two." And he put them both together, creating a whole new song. Rats won't live in the light. Lights won't live around rats. Now what do you think of that? And another thing, knowing the truth about life will save you from feeling that you're constantly about to be late for some imaginary appointment you need to keep. By way of a certain discovery, the relationship between talking and hearing is drastically altered in the operational perception of the discoverer. Every time this one guy said, "I," he had somebody else in mind. And one man's latest musical effort he calls, "I've got the talking blues. I've got the talking reds. I've got the talking yellows. I've got the talking ills and the talking cures. And every time this other guy'd think about himself, he'd actually have something else in mind.